what's the one Indian guy that got out of there?
Vivek,
man. They got him
and I
out
liked
of there.
Vivek. Like, I thought Vivek was like, I saw footage of him like being very kind to people on the college campuses who weren't necessarily aligned, and he was
Vivek
actually
played the game.
But like
But
you
he
said,
didn't
they got him
realize,
up out
though,
of there quick.
because he forgot that they were white first. And he
Right.
started talking to white people like he was better than them.
Right.
And they was like, we rock with you as long as you saying what we want to hear.
Because he had that tweet, that
Yeah,
infamous
about the
tweet about the
visas.
H1, the visas, and you know how America's we're raised on different values.
And he reminded people that he reminded white people that they're not the top of the food chain in America.
Right.
He said, no, there's Asians. They're the most educated group in America, and they have the highest grossing household income. And part of that is based on how they actually live by their family values, right? And so that disruption of that thought process to say that, wait a minute, we got the highest paying jobs and we run in these tech sectors. These white people have to look at themselves and say, wait a minute, you saying we DEI? Because what he said is, well, if we get rid of DEI and we operate based on merit, then we're still going to get the jobs because we're the ones educated in these sectors, right? And we're the ones the most qualified. So you don't want to go based on merit if we going toe to toe. And that's when they had to look at themselves and say, get his ass out of here.
Yeah, it's funny with this DEI conversation is like, you know, my co-host James was telling me, he's like, yo, if you look at some of the DEI numbers, it's mostly white women.
Yeah, it's mostly
who benefit.
white women.
But it's become this like, you know, the airplane crash that happened. Like when the first thing Trump went to was...
Yeah, that was stupid.
It was just, it's like...
Without having any information, you just go say DEI. That just shows you how they just going to utilize this.
It's like
as a
red
way
meat to
incite
throw
the
to...
base.
Yes,
Yeah.
to incite the base, right?
That's it.
And to me, it's like, you know, to have like a real conversation about like what DEI actually is, who it actually benefits, whether or not it's beneficial for the, you know, workforce as a whole, that's like a conversation that...
Yeah, that's different.
That's different. But I feel like what it's turning into is like, well, every time something's wrong,
right.
somehow you just pull this
because
boogeyman of DEI into it.
We're having two different conversations about DEI. It's the way it's weaponized. It's the actual reality of it. Right? Because for me, it got to be nuanced. The Democrats did go far left extreme with things.
Yes.
And they never take any accountability, which means that if they don't take accountability, then you're going to look at the base the same way. And we're going to say, we're still not rocking with you. Because they did go to the trans movement. They did go completely LGBT and women's movement. And specifically...
And they did go full war, too.
They did. And full war machine. But guess who was left out of that? Black men. Black men was like, okay, well, you said DI, but that don't mean black men. Even like you're going to see an increase in homosexuality in black media before you see an increase of black Muslims on the TV. Why is that? We contributed the most to Black American history, right? Yet when you talk about diversity, it don't mean diversity within Black America, especially when you talk about black men, because we're not a monolith. So our voices are not even contributed. So if I don't see myself, then I got to push myself. I got to force it. Now we got a problem, right? Even when they talk about black women being the most educated group in America, they was talking about that. Actually, that's within Black America. So saying that she's more educated than black men, because we going by the numbers, is Asians, whites, blacks, then Mexicans, right? And the most educated group would be East Indians. So what that really was just a divisive thing that they was utilizing as propaganda to push one up and push one down. You not doing enough and we doing more than y'all, right? Instead of this thing of ours doesn't work unless it's collaborative, unless it's cooperative. So I've seen influencers talk about how black men, heterosexual black men, they say cisgender. I hate that word, first of all.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You can't, first of all, don't call a straight male cis. You know what I'm talking about? It just don't make no sense.
It's almost like, I don't know, like I'm married to a Mexican woman.
Yeah.
Most of my friends growing up were, you know, Mexican American, and I don't know anybody who says Latinx.
Yeah, nobody gonna utilize none of those terms.
Yeah.
And so they went too far. Right? They took this playbook that doesn't represent the values of Black America whatsoever. Then you threw in intersectionality in there, right? And then we seen that wasn't real. So intersectionality is when the black women and the white women and the LGBT, right? They all group together as an oppressed group. And so you would hear all of these stats about what they're not getting. And I always be like, damn, y'all act like Black men are getting all the things y'all saying y'all not. Right? Even when we talk about VC capital at less than 1% going to black people, but instead of saying that number, you talk about the less than 1% going to black women. It's like, why don't we just talk about it as a whole? Because it's not a competition of who getting less between us. We have to be a family and then saying, how do we go get more? But I look at this timeline of history right now is wrong. When a lot of people will go study African-American studies, but you're still only going to get certain ancestral study, right, that gets pulled out. And then at the end of that, you have to ask yourself, if I indoctrinate you completely with African-American studies, what sort of consciousness do you have? Is it a do for self? Do you feel victorious? Or do you feel oppressed? Do you feel like an assimilationist, right? Do you feel like an integrationist? When you look at American history, why wasn't Marcus Garvey and Elijah Muhammad taught as much when they had the most successful platforms ever built in American history? We hear about Black Wall Street, which was incredible, right? But we never hear about the economic network of the Nation of Islam, right? When they would do their Savior's Day meetings, they would report $50 million in earnings. And in today's time, that's half a B. Right, which would have been worth more than Black Wall Street at the time. He had an economic network all across America, but that lesson was never even taught in school, that was the last economic empire that we had, right? And it didn't fail per se. His son inherited it and his son dismantled it. So it wasn't something that was just destroyed like Black Wall Street. So it doesn't end with this tragic story of saying everything we build, they're going to destroy. No, that's not the reality.
Yeah, like the narrative of what happened in Tulsa is like, It reads to historic history books better.
Yeah, it's a victim mindset that it possesses, and it ends with trauma. And anytime you feel like something is with trauma and you don't come from a place of victory, like, you know, you ask somebody when they from the Bay, where you from, they gonna say Oakland.
Right.
But why they say it like that though? It's because you saying I come from a place of pride.
Right.
You feel me? Like, this is where I'm speaking from. You feel me? Like that moral pride and that pride that you have in self makes you feel like you can do anything. But a lot of times the way we feel about Black history is like, oh, we came from this place of oppression, we were slaves. And then slavery is not taught right. Right? We don't talk about the Seminole Wars and when there was free towns in Florida and there was men like John Horst that would fought. He fought in 2 wars and in multiple battles. He fought for his freedom. He fought against the Indians. He fought with the Indians.
Right.
You feel me? And then, of course, there were the Black Seminoles that had babies, the Native Americans and Africans having babies. We don't even talk about that lineage and timeline enough. That was a complete warrior class where they was fighting wars and winning. And we just don't spread that information at all. Like, we're not a warrior class of super resilient people. Because if you got that kind of pride growing up, you think of your timeline differently, right? If you come from just the Malcolm and Martin timeline, that's conflict. Is you Malcolm, is you Martin? Is it Muslim, is it Christian?
If you're surface level educated on both of them, then they're opposites. They're polar opposites.
And where do they lead? Nowhere.
Right.
Right? I'm not talking about as a whole people, because people that follow Malcolm don't actually follow him, right? They inspired by the story, but they don't follow the teachings. A cat have a whole Malcolm X tattoo, a white girl on his arm, and goddamn, you feel me, go eat some pork the next day, but he was inspired by Malcolm. Right. That's not the power. The power is what made him Malcolm X. And that would be the teachings that he learned.